What's up, everybody? What's up, everybody? Welcome back to my channel. Again, I am Adam, aka Cali Coaster, aka PunkVid619, aka PunkVid Music. I'm here to do a follow-up to my previous video regarding the Stardust Racers incident. It has been in the news since the incident occurred on Wednesday, September 17th, 2025. Now, in my previous video, I did a little demonstration and explained how the Mack Ride's launch coaster restraint system is supposed to work if used properly. If you have not watched that video yet, I do not recommend watching this video any further. Please go back, watch that video, because this is a follow-up to that video with some of my own thoughts, my own experiences regarding those rides and regarding roller coasters and operations at parks in general. As a previous ride operator, yes, I'm sure you've probably heard me say that many times, but I feel that it's very important because that means I have a lot of experience in dealing with guests with these types of rides, and specifically guests that require certain accommodations that may or may not allow them to ride these rides. And that is where my experience comes into play, and where I feel like you should be listening to some of the things that I say, because it does come into play regarding this situation, regarding possibly other situations that may or may not arise if you're an operator at your park, or as a guest, or just as a casual observer who happens to see these incidents coming up on the news. Now, ADA guidelines prevent operators from addressing the disability specifically, but it does not prevent operators from addressing the guest as an individual. If I see a guest coming up in a wheelchair, one of my first questions will be, are you able to transfer yourself in and out of the wheelchair unassisted? That is a very important question, but it does not directly address their specific disability, because what their specific disability is still their business only. However, whether or not that disability prohibits them from being able to experience the attraction and ride safely is everybody's business, especially when it comes to situations like this. And by asking the simple question, are you able to transfer in and out of your wheelchair unassisted, does not point to what their specific disability is. Another question I ask is, are you able to support your upper body without additional assistance? Meaning, can you use your arms and or other appendages to keep your body upright throughout the duration of the ride? If they seem a little confused, I may explain to them that the ride does present extreme forces with unexpected directional changes, and ask them again, will you be able to support your body unassisted throughout the duration of the ride? Again, that question does not specifically address their disability or ask them what their disability is. It more refers to what their abilities are, which honestly, from what I've been told by people who are differently abled, they would rather be asked what their abilities are versus what their abilities are not. So I feel that that is an appropriate question as well, and one that should have also been asked by any ride attendant who comes across a guest that is in a wheelchair, on crutches, obviously unable to be fully mobile on their own. And none of those actually point to any specific disability. We're more curious about what your abilities are, because that's what matters to us. That ensures that you're able to safely ride unassisted. Now, certain attractions do allow you to experience the ride with ADA accommodations, but those are mainly gentle, dark ride type attractions, such as ones found at Disney, where they have specific vehicles designed for wheelchair accommodations in which the guest does not have to transfer out of that wheelchair. However, if they are on a ride that does require them to transfer out of a wheelchair, it is imperative that the operator know whether or not they can do so unaccommodated or not, if they're able to support their own body weight without accommodation, and if their body is able to withstand forces and direction changes without accommodation. Now, that kind of ties into what I was talking about previously with the restraints, in that the restraints, as they were designed by the manufacturer for those ride vehicles, work perfectly when used properly. When used for guests that meet all of those requirements, they're able to support their upper body. Those forces do not have any effect on whether or not they can maintain an upright, properly seated position. And I feel like those questions have been overlooked by everybody involved in the investigation at the incident at Epic Universe. And I don't feel that they're shedding a proper light on whether or not the ride is safe, because a lot of eyes have been watching this story. A lot of people are invested in the outcome, and the outcome of this may have a direct impact on theme park attractions moving forward, whether or not they're accommodating enough, or whether or not ADA laws prevent operators from properly operating the attraction as specified by the designer. And those are the questions and answers that I have been looking for, that I have yet to find. So again, if you have not seen my previous video explaining and demonstrating how the restraints on that particular attraction and those rides designed by Mack Rides work, please watch that video before continuing on with this one. Now, my next inquiry is, if that guest fit all those criteria and was still able to be injured, please do further investigation as to how that is possible, because in my experience, those restraints are pretty much in line with how an over-the-shoulder restraint works, and that it contains your body enough to where you do not have enough free movement to cause injury to yourself if you are using those devices properly and as designed. And another thing that I wanted to mention, I'm not trying to belittle or demean the loss of life that was experienced by that family and by those operators, because as an operator myself, the worst possible scenario is sending out a ride vehicle and having it come back with one or more guests that did not arrive back at the station in the same physical condition as which they boarded. That is the ultimate worst case scenario that nobody wants to have to experience. Because I can tell you, as a ride operator myself, I've witnessed injury on rides, and it was determined that that was not caused by the operation staff, by the park. It was by the guest not following the rules. But to having to witness that vehicle come back with that guest with those injuries, it still kind of leaves you with a bad taste in your mouth and has you questioning whether or not you're operating the ride in the way that you're supposed to, even though all investigation and all documentation and all everything supported the fact that you did everything right, but something still went wrong. It still haunts you, because in the back of your mind, you know that worst case scenario could have happened. Even though it didn't, it still could have happened. And a lot of parks hire operators that are not even of legal age to vote, but yet they are placed with the responsibility of the lives of other people in their hands. And a lot of people view that as, well, it's an entry level job, kids do it, blah, blah, blah. They don't understand unless they've been in that position as a ride operator. There is a lot of mental struggle that happens. Sometimes you wonder, even though you check the train 3 times, every restraint, every guest, every scenario was run through your head 3 times before you sent that train out into the end of the layout to do its thing. There's always that thing in the back of your mind. Did I check that? And sometimes you have that feeling like, what if the train comes back and somebody is unresponsive when it returns to the station? You really want to put that on children? That is so wrong. And I don't want to get into politics too much, but that's kind of what's wrong with our country, what's wrong with society. People view those jobs as like low level minimum wage, but there's a lot that goes into making sure that your experience at those establishments goes the way that you want it to, the way that we want it to. Nobody wants to see somebody get hurt. I guarantee you go to any theme park, you go to any restaurant, you go to anything. Nobody wants to see anybody get hurt. Nobody wants to see anybody get food poisoning. Nobody wants to see anything leave the establishment in worse condition than they arrived. I guarantee nobody wants that to happen. But your mindset is, oh, well, that's a minimum wage, low level, entry level job. It should not be. And that is the problem. I guarantee you those operators did everything that they could to ensure that that guest had the experience that they were looking for. But certain situations and circumstances arrive that were beyond anybody's control, and it happens. Could a foreign object have flown, albeit it's rare and highly unlikely that it happened multiple times, where a foreign object flew from an unknown source and struck that specific guest multiple times during the course of the ride? I guarantee that's almost impossible. Okay, well, what's the next scenario? Well, he lost consciousness. Why did he lose consciousness? Okay, he lost consciousness. Again, in my previous video, I showed how limited movement you have from your upper body and your mid-torso to be able to flop over like that to cause blunt force trauma on any part of the ride vehicle. Unless your physical body was not adequate enough to properly support you throughout the course of the ride. And there are signs throughout pretty much every amusement park. Whether or not you want to read them as the guest, that is on you. The information is made available. ADA laws prohibit operators, cast members, staff members, whatever you call them, from asking about specifics relating to your disability. We are only able to ask certain questions pertaining to what you are able to do, which limits our ability to properly ensure that you are experiencing things the way that you are meant to. So it is a tragic situation. It is sad that it happened, but it did happen. And more questions need to be asked of what led to this situation. Please do not hate me. I'm only trying to present fact and present a point of view from an operations standpoint, because we are limited as to the information that we are allowed to ask for from guests regarding their physical abilities. So, damned if you do, damned if you don't. It happened. I really hope the family finds the peace that they're looking for, and that if there was an issue with the ride vehicle or the restraints themselves, other than I don't even know, but I'm just trying to figure out what happened, just like the rest of you. I do not think that this is a situation that should be dealt with lightly. because it is one of those scenarios that are few and far between, but they still need to be addressed, and the correct testing and procedures need to be done to prevent situations like this from happening in the future. Do I think replacing lap bars with over-the-shoulder restraints is the answer? No. Do I think further investigative testing needs to be done? Most definitely. Because if somebody was able to slump over far enough to where their head was able to strike a metal frame on the front end of the car, as was suggested by the lawyer representing the family, more testing should be done before the wrong adjustment is made to increase the safety of these rides. That's all I'm saying. I hope this isn't too much for you guys. And if you do find further information that I am not aware of, I'm going to try to stay on top of this as much as I can. But if my updates aren't as updated as the information you have, please comment below. Send me a DM. I don't care. I want the information so I can make an educated guess, or so I don't have to make educated guesses as to what happened. So I know exactly what happened, because I love riding these rides too. And I want to make sure that my next trip is not going to end in a situation similar to the Zavala's family. So, and I hope that the rest of you do as well. So that's where I'm coming from. I'm coming from it as an enthusiast, as a former operator, and as a fan. I want to know the facts so I can best create my next great experience. So please don't hate me. Like, comment, subscribe. That's all I got for now. Deuces.